Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about something that plenty of you have requested of me over time, about dozens of times. And last video I uploaded on my masteries was pretty much about a year ago from now. So I figured it's a good time to go over this again, because let's face it, most of the time when you see a mastery video or any kind of like content guide from a year ago, often people think it's outdated. Even in this case, since masteries hasn't changed, my habits using masteries also haven't really changed. And in this video I will be showcasing all, well, basically the mastery setups that I personally use. Typically it's two different setups, and with that we're also going to be going through exactly how I change, how much it costs from each step to another, how much a full circle of my mastery changes cost me. Right, so as we can see currently, I am in my Suicide Mastery setup. It's a fairly standard setup with max precision, max cruelty, one standard point in courage. I always tend to run max deep wounds, max despair, and 1 point in assassin. Now, if I do go in some specialty content or I'm reshaping my mastery specifically for a single champion, that can obviously vary, but this is how my mastery setup looks vast majority of the time in off season, and also whenever I spec Suicide Masteries during the season. This is my setup, and offensively, so you guys can take a screenshot of it if you please. We're going to move on to the defensive tree, and the defense basically doesn't get touched. Like defense, I just set it the way it is and I leave it be there, and I never ever change it. I think it was Ronin Noob who originally came off with the concept of Switchblade, which is kind of like a variation of that here, where I basically leave this tree as is just to save the cost. Ideally, for instance, if I'm not running willpower, I would have had a different defensive tree. I wouldn't max willpower, I would run 1 in willpower, or sometimes I didn't run anything in willpower. But since I did want to switch there and back as cost efficiently as I possibly could, this is how my defensive setup looks 99% of the time. Right, now that we have checked this bit out, we're going to go to my proficiencies, and whenever I am running attrition mastery setup, it's a very bare bone setup right here. So it's just maximum parry, max in stupefy, 1 in dexterity. That's all I need, that's all I use, and this setup uses up all of my mastery points. So 8 in proficiencies, 18 in defense, 33 in offense. Right, so we currently have 389 units. And I'm going to respec my attack now, as I normally would do. There's going to be only one basically major change to keep in mind. So I go 1 in strength, 1 in greater strength, still 1 in courage. And because I do 1 in courage, I don't have to max out cruelty, and I don't typically, because with today's modern day champions, typically it's much more important that the critical hit does occur, and how hard it hits, it's significantly less relevant, because we do have ability triggers that trigger on critical hits, and we don't have any single ability that triggers on extent of critical damage or whatever. Either way, so if I have to choose, I do find it more important to have precision maxed out, and that is how I run my base bare bone setup. Now, going from here, you do have options how you want to distribute your points. As I said before, I am a very big believer in despair, one of my favorite masteries, period. Find it extremely useful in everyday scenarios, especially like in Alliance War, because you mitigate opponents' willpower healing. It's not like the greatest thing, but it's always helpful, and it just gives so many champions ability to deal with regeneration. Then deep wounds, obviously again it entirely depends on what champions you use, but since overall Nick Fury is pretty much the most used champion in game, plus plenty of other champions I play run bleed, always like to have it. Then I pretty much always run 1 point in assassin. The reason for that is because you effectively get double the benefit than any other following point would give you, and I just find it perfectly comfortable with 1, and that is it here. So at this point I'm at 319 units, so it cost me exactly 70 units. So that's 2 energy refills and a bit. So we're going to put on here 319. I'm going to put on minus 70 to basically respec from my suicides into my every day-to-day setup. Right. Okay, it's not quite big enough there. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave a space as well so you guys can see it better. But minus 70 is, yeah, how much it cost. And at this point, you have a perfectly functioning mastery setup, which I quite frequently also use. I do let those 9 points hang about if I must, because this is the best point to be when you're not entirely sure whether the next time you will want to place for like Alliance War defense, or will you need Mystic Dispersion, or you will want to spec your Suicide Masteries back. So this is perfectly functional. This can serve both purposes. But let's say next I want to place my Alliance War defense, which is the main reason typically why I take off my Attrition Masteries, especially during the season. And at that point, I simply add 4 points in Limber. And because I typically place Mystic Defenders as well, I max out my Mystic Dispersion. Truth to be told, this is my also standard questing setup. If I'm not running Attrition Masteries, this is how my Mastery setup looks pretty much all the time. So I have max Limber, max Mystic Dispersion, max Parry, max Stupefy to extend stun durations. Defense, we didn't touch at all whatsoever thus far. And I have 24 points in offense, max Despair, max Deep Wounds, and your bare bone offensive tree up there. And to basically get ready and set for Alliance War defense, it only costs 10 additional units. So it's a very, very small amount of cost. So we are currently at 309 units here. And it only costs 10 additional units. Very important in my opinion. And let me just try and find it here. I'll update it. It probably wasn't the best idea to do this in this format, but hey. So we have 309 minus 10. Right, so far so good? Yes. However, here is the best thing and the most kind of like cost efficient bit, right? From this setup, which is what I use mainly whilst I'm attacking in Alliance War, if I use champions who are not compatible with Suicide Masteries, which is a setup that I typically use for my videos, for my questing, or basically any champion that doesn't like Attrition Masteries. So this is my basic setup. And then, this is the best bit, because you can spec back into Suicide Masteries very, very cost efficiently. So we're just going to recover all the points from proficiencies. And I'm going to put on back my proficiencies as it was before, as it was bare boned. So we're going to max out Parry, we're going to max out Limber, we're going to put 1 point in Dexterity, and we're going to max out Stupefy because I always like those increased stun durations. And at this point, we have 9 points left over. I can show that to you as well, which is basically exactly the place where we were initially. This is pretty much how we started, minus those 9 points. At this point, we're just going to place them into Glass Cannon. And put 1 in recall, unfortunately, still a must. And then we're going to go into Liquid Courage, which obviously is going to cost some units. And then we're going to go into Double Edge. And we have 1 point left over. If you want to put in Cruelty, you may. I typically just leave it as is. I don't touch that 1 point because it's 5 units. I don't quite want to do it all the time. And we are back at 269 units. Right, so we're gonna go back up. We're gonna come here, and units when we're back in Suicides is 269. And how much? 309, that's 40 units, right? Mine's 40. That's how much it cost us to put back on the Susu masteries. So this total circle has cost us 70, 10, and 40 units, which comes up to exactly 120 units, which in my opinion is one of, if not the cheapest way how you can effectively spec in and out and back the Suicide Masteries. Because yeah, if you don't even spec back right, it will cost you only 80 units if you just want to go from Suicides, not Suicides. But yeah, overall, clearly we can see that the highest cost is whenever we are respeccing the offensive tree, which is the reason why I leave it the way it is, exactly when I run Suicide Masteries and when I don't, with the only exception, obviously, the points and the Suicide Masteries themselves. That makes it very, very simple for me to switch back, forward, not to how to reset the offensive tree a lot at all. It's very time efficient overall as well, because that is a very long time to invest in resetting masteries. Perhaps this video is not going to be relevant in the very near future if Kabam finally pulls a finger up or out of their rear and actually gives us mastery presets, but at least in that case you will still have the idea of setups that I do use. However, if we do have presets, then mine might look slightly different because I would jiggle my defense and some other stuff. But yes, this is basically it. This is how I run my mastery setups, pretty much all of them, how I respec and spec back, and these are basically the ones that you see in pretty much every single video. When you're doing Abyss and some other things, then obviously you can do some special things and tweaks to them, like max courage and max assassin or whatever. But in general, for 99% of the content, 99% of the time, this is exclusively exactly what I do with my masteries. So I do hope that this has been helpful to you guys. And if it has, then definitely hit that like button, hit that sub button. The channel is currently pushing for 32,000 subscribers. You guys have been absolutely amazing. We have been growing immensely. And yeah, at 32k, we're gonna have another wonderful Abyss of Legend stream. So let's make that happen. Other than that, I'm pretty much done here. So see you next time.